Educated by headlines, written by someone stressed by deadlines. And that's that.
Single line, single phrase, puffy.
Yeah, it's literally from the same poem as last week's intro. So,
are you essentially just gonna do? What's the word? Fuck. I was about to say duvet, but that's not the right word. What is it with you?
About to be blanketed up.
What's the word when you like you bring it out for the first time? You know,
like tease it. Snippets.
No, like you
Promo?
like premiere, like it's like premiere, but it begins with like a duh sound. I can't fucking think of it right now. If I fucking think of it, just like everything else, I'll come back to it later.
Drip.
No. Not at all.
Dilute. No, that's not at all.
I mean, now we're just naming D words.
Yeah.
Just playing that game where like you say something, I just say something that sounds that the first thing I think of when you say that word.
Yeah, pretty much. But here we are. For full clarity, this is a Friday night, and this show will be released on Tuesday. And currently, history has been made. This has been a history-making year, by the way. You know, like we've seen, like there's a lot of firsts we've seen.
Yeah.
The president, a president of the United States, is now a convicted felon, pending appeal.
Pending appeal.
He is very much I could call him a fucking convicted felon, and he can't sue me at all. It's not even allegedly. He is just now a felon.
Yeah, it was pretty bad. And stuff was coming up.
But do you know who I really feel bad for though? I don't even know who it is. But have you seen when Trump does these like interviews outside of the courtroom, like in like an underground parking lot, effectively, and he's like talking?
Honestly, I don't think I ever want to see that man talk outside of him being grilled in a courtroom. So no.
So yeah, like he'll do these like statements after every single like.
Oh, like press statements.
I was gonna say episode. No, it's not this show. And he'll be like, "Yeah, it's all a sham and all that stuff." But like to his left, there's like a guy. I don't even know if it's a security guard or like a lawyer of some sort who just has the like, and he just stares directly into the camera for the whole time Trump is speaking. It's actually impressive how this guy can look so serious while the most unserious, like, democratically elected leader in the world ever is speaking and saying the most unserious nonsense things. I really wish I could, I can't even, because we don't have that functionality on YouTube yet, but like people who are like watching this on YouTube or listening to this wherever you listen to this, like it's like have a Google search for it. Just it's perfect. I'm a big fan of people with like stern, evil-looking faces because it's just funny.
It's also your moments. It's also your face.
It's also my face. Yeah, it's also my go-to face. But yeah, I forgot to do this bit. Welcome to Silly Wells. This is a mental health podcast. We discuss mental health stuff. This podcast is for everyone, but it might not be for you. And by that, I mean, and the reason why I'm expanding on this further is because somebody sent me a WhatsApp message being like, I really like that. It's really cute. But can you explain what you mean by that? Because it's a bit confusing.
After the last week's episode where you decided to fucking just be like, nah, I'm just not going to explain it properly.
Exactly
this episode.
That. Like, I would have smacked the shit out of you for saying that. Okay, just it's a bit confusing. Like you follow along. Okay, you should you listened to episode 1 because you referenced that in a previous conversation we had. Okay, and now you're here and you're going, what does that mean? But fine, I will explain it. Why would I explain it? Because I don't know you super well, so me threatening to smack the shit out of you probably isn't a good move. But we're gonna do it anyway. By that, it means this show can be accessed by anyone, and I don't mind who listens to it, neither does Joe, and regardless of your intentions, you could hate us both and you listen to it. By all means, continue to listen. You're giving us an extra view. You're effectively giving us future money. That's wild, okay? So keep doing it. Or you might be someone who likes us. You'd be like, hey, do you know, I like these guys. And you support of the show. It's great. This is open to whoever. I'm never going to be like, I don't want people to listen to this. However, we discuss things that aren't always appropriate for people and could be potentially triggering. So while this is for everyone, it might not be for you specifically, because you might hear something and go, I don't want to ever hear this ever again. Like, for example, when Baby Reindeer came out on Netflix, everyone had the bright idea of sending it to me. Be like, hey, you were stalked. I was like, hey, thanks guys, that was great. And then when I was like, I'm never gonna watch this, nearly everyone's reaction was, well, there's a scene in it, and they went into direct detail about how creepy this woman was to this guy. I'm like, thanks guys, but yeah, that's what we're trying to protect you from. And
Yeah.
that's that.
I mean, I think if we know, like, certainly the Presents episodes could go into darker places where we'll like actively say, like, yeah, this one's going to include more this and that. We don't always know where it's going to go with the actual, like, the normal journal episodes, because some weeks are. I was about to suddenly start talking about triggering stuff, but I realize that's doing the disservice.
Some
all of a
things
sudden.
you want to die.
Sometimes there are things that, yeah, sometimes we're in that state, and then sometimes we're really not. So it's all up in the air. Like it's not always aware, which is why we at least give a sort of blanket statement that we're generally going to be talking about mental health, and we'll end up talking about sensitive subjects as a result. And some of these topics will include the kind of darker side of mental health on occasion, as I kind of alluded to last week, for example. Not the worst, I would say, but I definitely said some things that probably would be, you know, I've gotten a message as a result of last week from someone. So, hey.
From who? Like, it's probably
the one you sent me.
Oh, yeah. So here's the thing. I haven't actually listened to that message.
Yeah, that's fine.
I didn't. It's not my message to listen to. I was like, I'm not going to listen to it.
It's fine. Yeah.
But yeah, I've been, am I starting? I'm going to start us off.
Yes.
Look at that. That's a change up. Yeah, I've been on half term. It's about to come to an abrupt end. I haven't planned my coaching session for tomorrow. I am behind on my football qualification coursework, and I am also in a lot of pain because today I had Muay Thai sparring, and I am just getting whooped. I will celebrate the 1 or 2 hits I get on people, and then in that time I've finished like celebrating and being happy and proud of myself. They've hit me 42 times. So it's like, you can't celebrate anything, of course, naturally so, and you shouldn't. But also, there's active learning happening. And this whole week, because I've been not working, I've been able to go to Muay Thai a lot more. And you learn a lot. And if you get partnered with somebody who's like fairly talkative, they will just help a lot.
Yeah.
And it's really cool. And I love it. And if you can hear the dog in the background, I'm sorry. I will happily assassinate him later. You pick up loads of information, and you can just like pretty much learn how things work for different people and see how they apply to you. For example, I come from like a more of a boxing background and a grappling background, which means that I wouldn't have necessarily if you don't know anything about fighting or anything, that's totally fine. You can still get. I wouldn't be standing super straight on, for example. I wouldn't be standing just like Muay Thai. You tend to have your feet fairly close together, and you're not really at that much of an angle. You're somewhat square, not fully square, but a little bit square, because you want to be able to throw kicks and throw punches and knees really quickly. So you don't really want to constantly be bringing like your back foot forward in, for example. That takes too long.
Yeah,
and you want to be able to block kicks as well.
You need a consistent balance. Yeah, you need a consistent balance, and you can't. And if you're constant, obviously the whole point of like getting good is so that you could, in theory, like move around more and stuff like that. But like if you watch Muay Thai, it's like they just spend time like sort of slightly circling like in this very like particular motion, like particular pattern, and they are, and very much keeping like a certain stance, a very specific stance, which is like iconic to Muay Thai. Like drawings of that stance like exist everywhere.
Yeah, and like people have their own unique stance as well, which is terrifying, by the way, because you're facing somebody good. And whenever I spar with someone like one of the more, I would say elite level, I think the best ones I've seen, I think that they're currently in like the amateur divisions and like fighting and just about having their first few fights, but they're so miles ahead of me, it's ridiculous. And I love that. As I've said it before, favorite things to be outclassed by somebody because all you can do is learn. They have unique stances, and it's terrifying when you go, hey, okay, we're gonna spar next round, right? And you touch their gloves, and then like the bell rings, and all of a sudden, like it's like Kaioken, Dragon Ball Z stuff, right? They just go, all right, time to die, and like I don't have a unique stance here. My background is professional wrestling, which means in a grappling situation, I'm actually not the worst in the world. However, Muay Thai grappling and like grappling in a more like a wrestling context, very different. You can leverage a few things, but the whole concept of it is still more of a technical based thing where you're trying to control your opponent's ability to not hurt you, but keep your ability to hurt them. It's one whole big game of chess, and it happens in a matter of seconds. Anyway, like I got caught with an elbow straight away today, and I was like, oh my God, I'm gonna die. Like it didn't rock me to the point in which like it didn't rock me at all. I just got hit with it. And when I was like having a second in the clinch, I was like, okay, don't get hit by another elbow. But also, can I take that elbow in a different context, being in a ring with like hundreds of people watching? And I was thinking to myself, maybe. And I was like, hey, do you know what? The fact that I'm not like running away from that and I stayed in that clinch and I was like exposed to more elbows is a good sign for me. It's a bad sign as a fighter from a technical standpoint because you're like, hey, you're going to get elbowed again. But the fact that I wasn't like running away from it is something I can go, hey, look at that. We're good. You're doing okay. You're doing okay. It doesn't matter if like, like you're barely 7 months in, 8 months in. You've only been training really consistently properly those months. You took like a whole 2-3 week break off in like February time. So yeah, it's not bad.
It's pretty much been alongside the podcast, right?
It has. It all started at the same time. Like, well,
a little bit beforehand, I think.
Yeah, but because it coincided a lot with like I started Muay Thai and it was going really well, and then like as like things went like I think as like my relationship ended, is when I ramped up the training, and then the come down came off of it, and then I stopped for like a better part of like 3 weeks, and then it went up again because I no longer gave a shit. Like and so yeah, and then the podcast quality has improved alongside of it. That's what I've noticed, which is why like our listening numbers have gone up again. Like they were stagnating around like, it's gonna be weird listening to this when we have more listeners, but like some episodes were getting like 9 to 10 listens, and I was like, damn, that's really low. I have to factor in the fact that like one of them is a friend of mine, one of them is you, and one of them will be me checking the intro. So it's not a lot of listeners. And then like I go back and I look at the stats now, and we're talking like nearly every episode has just under 20 or even over 20 listens. And then they won't all be us. So I'm like, oh, okay, that's at least 17, 18 unique listens.
Thank you, by the way. I guess we should just say that. Yeah. Thanks for listening.
Yeah. And then, of course, like we have people saying things about the show.
The stats are always weird for this stuff because, weirdly enough, I actually know a decent amount about this because of my YouTube habit. Like, I've heard a lot of content, like people who make content, like talk about stats and things like that in a way, and trying to like analyze them, process them, and understand them in the right way. It's to an extent. It's a lot more. There's so many factors. Like a video will do really well because a previous video was really good, but then that second video won't be as good, and so there's a dive on the third video. Do you know what I mean? Like there's So it's more, it's almost like it's playing catch up, because really it's like the expectations people have rather than the actual like how good it was in and of itself. Obviously, if you can like meme something, then suddenly it can like blow up because people are just sending it around. You know, like it's a whole thing. You know, something being good doesn't necessarily mean it gets a lot of views. Not that I'm saying anything we've done is like spectacular, but like it's obviously, you know, a whole thing. I was going to say something earlier and I lost it. Oh well. But I was going to say, like, it's genuinely really cool to have seen you like done all of this, and that you can see a lot of change. And like, I mean, I haven't seen you since I moved, right?
No, because like,
yeah.
Now everyone's gonna hear like what we are and what we're about. Oh, look at that! That's really random, really weird. I just went on our YouTube channel and I forgot about like our shorts, because I've been making clips and stuff. And the one which I've based around something that you said back in episode 8 of all things, has got like quite a lot of views on it.
Oh, cool!
Damn, look at that, Joe the Superstar. Yeah, like, so I've done a Phil Neville. What was the question?
Oh, don't ask me that. No, I was gonna say, it's been cool seeing because I haven't seen you at all since I moved, but obviously I've had, you know, from you in particular, I think the Muay Thai has been the biggest sort of like check mark of you know, the change that's been happening for you for the most part. Like, you know, for like when things have been happening and stuff like that, like the things that I kind of mark you by based upon what you said, and like that's a consistent thing that has been changing in the way you describe like how you're getting on and things like that. And it's really cool to like to hear your progress. Basically, I always enjoy like it's okay. Now I'm going to start talking. So, of the content that I'm allowed to watch, because it's limited and because I think it's of a very high quality and it's in a specific realm that I'm happy to watch, of like D&D stuff, particularly of Dropout. I've been watching some of their seasons recently, and there are some really good messages and interesting things that are oddly relevant to me in the last few seasons and in general around the whole, around like the people who are actually making it, as well as the actual content they're making, like the D&D stories and narratives. And it's really interesting because like I've started to realize how I think I can like regulate myself a bit better. Like today I'm in a weird upswing, which I think is partly exhaustion. Like that kind of odd thing where like exhaustion can make you feel good, where because on Wednesday, like I've been ill recently, I should be clear. I've been like physically ill. So recently I've been sleeping awfully, and it's meant that I've been waking up stupidly late, and I was really trying to sort out my sleep schedule before work started again, you know, because I only have so much time to get that done. Wednesday comes round and I could not sleep Tuesday night, Wednesday morning at all. And I ended up going to sleep at like fucking 8 o'clock in the morning. And then I woke up at 4 o'clock in the afternoon on Wednesday, and I was like, okay, well, I have to go to work tomorrow, and I know that I'm not going to be able to sleep very well, but I'll try. Couldn't go to sleep, and so I didn't sleep. And I just went from Wednesday 4 o'clock in the afternoon all the way to Thursday 7 or 8 or something like that, and then just fucking conked out after I came back from work. So then that's why today was weird, because I woke up super fucking early. But I went to the library, did some job application stuff and just job searching in general. Did find some nice stuff. So hopefully some of that will come through and actually be something.
Yeah.
But also just kind of like chilling and also looking up things like charities and stuff to volunteer for, and particularly the Wildlife Trust, because since I want to kind of get into conservation and things, I realized that I kind of need to do volunteering in those sectors. Otherwise, it's going to be really difficult to. If I don't, it's going to be really difficult to eventually like try to enter that space without like enough experience or whatever. I might have a degree that's relevant, but it's not necessarily going to help in terms of like picking me out versus someone else. So there are a few places around here because, you know, Worcester and Worcestershire is largely country. So there's a few places nearby that I'm going to apply for, like to do volunteering. It's very strange. You kind of apply for volunteering almost like it's a job, which is slightly bizarre. Like there's set days and it's like you will do this many hours every week kind of thing, because I guess there must be some limitation to how many people they can have volunteer in that way, and they need like consistent volunteers as opposed to like people who are just kind of like volunteering on a whim. But whatever, it doesn't really matter. But basically the point is that a lot of the time, in order to get into these spaces, you kind of have to put in work with no actual reward for a while, beyond just, you know, the wonder of doing the job itself. So, and learning, I guess, through that. So hopefully, you know, I can cinch that and it will be fine. Like there's literally like 2 places, for example. Like there's it's to the, like, that's what I mean. Like it's like a job. It was like, oh, we've got 2 places. It's like, what do you mean you have 2 places? Surely if more people came and volunteered, that'll be fine. But it must be more complicated than that in some world and some understanding. So yeah, all in all, sorry, my point being was I realized that, you know, one of the things I'm missing is I'm doing work that I don't enjoy ultimately. So I kind of want to do work that I can enjoy, like work that I can gain some satisfaction out of. And it's sort of a good excuse to get me out of the house, as opposed to kind of doing whatever kind of fucking floats my boat in my time off. So spending my time off working, sure, but in a very different environment, an environment that's probably a lot healthier for me and is generally something that I'm much more interested in anyway. And yeah, just kind of going in that direction, because it occurs to me, and this comes from the D&D stuff as well, it's just that is that like working in and of itself is not a bad thing. We like labor is a virtue, as in terms of you know, and you don't have to be like a fucking like like far right wing capitalist, like, you know, trying to exploit people to say that. Like it's very, like, labor is a great thing, like, you know, doing something that it feels satisfying and sustains and is you know, and is something that you connect with and doesn't isolate you from, and you know, literally promotes inclusivity with the world around you and the environment around you and the people around you, is a good thing. And obviously if everyone is doing these sorts of things, you're generally improving stuff. So there's nothing wrong with that. Like, you know, mutual cooperation is a great thing. It's wonderful. I don't care so much about like the money side of stuff, like for the profits and all of that stuff. It gets to it, you know, that's when it begins to get weird. But just purely like, you know, so it doesn't. So I realize, like, you know, I think I will find there'll be a lot of merit probably in me trying to seek that a bit and trying to give myself work and give myself connections through that to, you know, just generally maybe enter a space in which I'm probably going to want to do someday. And I don't know. And it's one of those things where, you know, it feels like it's one of the last things you want to do when literally work is like the thing you really don't like and the thing that you don't want to be doing. But I mean, you do passions which are absolutely work. Like, you know, you do football, for example, and things like that. It's not like a hobby. It's really, that's a thing that you do primarily as a big part of your week. So, and lots of people do this, you know, lots of people do these sorts of things, but it occurs to me that I'm not particularly like the thing I'm looking for so often, and why my addiction can come in so easily, is something to stimulate my person. So like to stimulate my brain, blah, 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 blah. And it's not, I don't think it's worth my time being sucked into stuff that I find ultimately unproductive and doesn't really stimulate me in the right way. But stimulates me but it kind of like, it kind of like takes my attention away, but it doesn't actually make my brain like want to do anything good, and it just kind of like makes it, just fills me with stuff. This was the thing I realized today as a big part of that. I realized that and this is very much because I did want to talk about this now. I hope I'm not jumping around too much. I think I'm making my points, but I'm maybe not making them all the way. I apologize if that's the case, and it's hard to follow. It's just there's a lot of things that were entering my head today. Tiredness and being awake and being up so early and going to the library and stuff. It kind of made me self-reflect a bit. The message that I heard, I just want to slightly reply to it a little bit because, and this is not I'm pretty sure it's is it from Ryan, right?
Yes.
Yeah, cool. Okay. So I was pretty sure it was. I just wanted to confirm because you didn't say.
Yeah, I don't know why my thing was like, I'm going to just forward this to you and you'll know exactly who it's from and you'll know everything. I give you no context at all either. Like,
yeah. Yeah, I was pretty sure it was because I thought I'd heard his voice before because I'd seen a video of him and stuff like that. So, yeah. So Ryan, like, you seem like a really cool guy, genuinely. I'd love to meet you when I come down to London. I'll make sure Alex makes a play date for us both.
Play date. Well, he lives in a different part of the country entirely. He's closer to you than you are to me.
Oh, does he? Oh, really? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Where is he roughly?
Northamptonshire.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Yeah. Okay. He's sort of like peeking into the Midlands, I get. So there's a particular aspect that I want to kind of just lay out, which is about my relationship with YouTube at this point and things like that, versus how I think it is for some other people. Obviously, I've kind of divulged a lot of this information already, so I'm not going to like copy a lot of the things I've already been saying. Like, I don't want to talk over it over and over again. But obviously this is, I've had it for a long period of time. It's not specifically just YouTube, like where this comes from in my brain. It's like a general thing. It's just I latched onto YouTube and that became it. And I really don't think I can't. My relationship with YouTube is now not quite the same as a lot of people's, where I can kind of dip in and dip out. It's at the end of the day, it's whether it's just a case of me not having self-control or I don't have self-control, particularly with YouTube. Either way doesn't really matter. I don't have great self-control with my actions around it. So it's very difficult for me to it's very, very difficult for me to kind of set up YouTube as like a reward system, or to or to like be like, oh, I'll have an hour of it and then I'll do X. I don't have once I kind of go down that road, it becomes very difficult to pull me out of it. And when I say very difficult, I mean like if I'm on my own, it's essential. Like 95% of the time or more, that it won't happen. And in the past, when I've tried to kind of set out what my actual, like set out like times and kind of like routinely set when like I can do YouTube and stuff, it doesn't work. It's far. I find much more success in removing it for giving me like actual productivity and a routine that can work, like by developing a new routine, than trying to do it that way. To me, that's harder. I didn't quite explain that before, even though me and you, Alex, talked about it a lot. That I think it is actually a harder thing to do, but I in particular find it harder to set an amount that I'm allowed and keep to that, as opposed to removing it. Like it's easier, like from a psychological level. The other part of that is, it's interesting that let me try and like let me try and like actually coalesce this into something that is succinct. If you talk about general habits, we tend to talk about them with more kind of fluidity, like we're capable of changing them more easily. Whereas something like a substance, we tend to view in a different way. And I understand why that exists, because most people don't get into as bad a habits as I, for example, might with YouTube. The truth is that at this point in my life, I essentially view my addiction as I would view alcohol addiction, where it's not simply that you can just say, yeah, I'll just have one drink. Like it's because you are chemically changing in the brain as a result of doing the thing, and at that point you're no longer in the space that you can make good decisions for yourself. Like you've gone past the line. Like the threshold has the floodgates are open, the threshold has been crossed. So as a result, that is the tendency for me, is to want to push away from engaging with that and allowing myself to be tempted into that space, just sort of by virtue of me being able to just convince myself, because it's too easy to convince myself and then fall down a spiral, as opposed to like spiraling up, for example. The other aspect that I think I want to make clear is the actual effect that YouTube has on me versus what I think it has for a lot of people. I truly think that YouTube, or more importantly, just the media that I'm consuming and the amount to which I'm consuming it. And I think I'm actually a lot more willing to speak about this now, because I didn't kind of want to say how many hours a week, for example, and things like that. I have had weeks where I was on YouTube for 80 hours of the week, which is more than
stats.
Which is more than 10 hours a day, right? That's nuts. Like, don't get me wrong, obviously, like certain days are worse than others, but that's a stupid amount. That's looking at like 13 hours on certain days. Now, it's not true that that's every week, by the way.
Like,
but
with those stats, like, is it, because do you fall asleep to YouTube as well?
Yes. So you could probably take off an amount of that, but like, obviously when the video ends, it's just done. So it's not like it's not like it's not like it's auto playing,
Oh, okay, because I have autoplay on, so my stats don't look as bad as yours still, but they look terrible. Like, I think mine like 60 hours or something, because it'll play as long as my PlayStation is on, and I think
gotcha.
It's like maybe 2 or 3 hours my PlayStation stays on YouTube.
Yeah, no. So yeah, it's not. I don't have that luxury of saying like, oh, it's not so bad. No, it is bad. Like, if you wanted to be like really forgiving and say like take off, I don't know, like 10% of it, that's still 72 hours. You're still looking at stupid amounts of time. And again, that's not every week. I want to be clear, but like we're looking at genuine, like how a week is sometimes for me. The truth is, and this is what I was realizing today, this was like the epiphany I had, was that in a way, what it does is it actually accrues anxiety. And I've talked to you about, last week, in fact, I very specifically mentioned the fact of, even now, despite the fact that I have no problems with anyone in this house that I'm currently in, that I, worry about leaving the room and things like that, and essentially, and that always seems to be happening around that's always a spiral that seems to occur around the fact that I'm watching YouTube and things like that, because I don't have a reason to leave that's good enough, that's more important than what my brain wants. Does that make sense? Like,
yeah.
my like, I can be hungry, I can be unhygienic, I can be, like I can be potentially like getting bruised or something like that from like being in bed all day, that kind of thing. The potential for that is not as bad as the goodness of the dopamine and stuff that my brain is experiencing, because it's starved and it just wants and wants and wants, right? So therefore, I'm willing to. It's not even like I give it up on purpose. It's more like I'll kind of not begin to feel those things. However, like I'll begin to stop feeling hungry. I'll begin to stop feeling blah 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 blah. But the reality is that I am entirely aware that this is happening. So there's a very mixed feeling of the anxiety of knowing what the state I'm in and who and what I've been doing for the past however long, and that like spiraling in my brain about how I view myself and everything like that, versus the sort of actual recognition that, you know, I'm versus the actual recognition bodily of that, right? There's a big difference between the two, and knowing something and then going down a line in that direction and then not having the body to kind of the body like making enough of a message to you to push you off the bed and things like that is, you know, really fucks with your ability to like self-sustain and, you know, homeostasis, like keep yourself in a good rhythm, in a good medium. Like you just can't do that because you're both your minds are taking you in the absolute opposite directions of that. Both your minds, you know what I mean? Like the kind of aspects of your brain that are like of attention. In one moment your attention is here, and then one moment attention is in the opposite side completely.
Yeah.
So what ends up happening is that if that isn't around, I can't really be anxious in the same way because I become very much aware of my body, my experience. I get more bored. Like it becomes more difficult to both distract me and for me to kind of enter those spaces where I feel bad for the actions I've taken, and or even for me to worry about what might potentially happen. Like at the end of the day, I'm not like thinking personally like, oh, I'm really worried I'm going to be on this all day. I don't think that in my head, but I know deep down that there is a part of me that thinks to themselves on occasion, I might have difficulties with this later on. You know, like I might not do this or I might not do that. And that's an even worse issue. And of course don't get me started on like the way in which it affects sleep and things like that. Like, you know, I really should just never have my phone anywhere near me. Unfortunately, everything is in my room, including my laptop. So I don't have a lot of too much control, but you know, but you know, all of this is culminating to mean that I sometimes, and this is, to be honest, is how I kind of felt. I don't feel it as much now. I want to make it clear. I'm so much better than I used to be. Like years ago when I was in Bournemouth at different places. But in Bournemouth, I definitely felt a lot of the time like I was in a prison of my own bedroom. And I also happened to be in very small rooms quite regularly, as it turned. Like thinking back, like I tended to be in smaller rooms. And it is a very weird sensation of feeling like, oh, I feel like I'm in prison again. Like, you know, like it does begin to feel like I've constructed bars around my existence, you know, but the bars have no like external pressure. It's all like internally pushing outward to form the bars. It's a very strange, like it's like forming an aura around me where anything that comes near it like repulses me, you know, that kind of thing. So it becomes very difficult to then self-regulate myself at all. Like suddenly self-regulation becomes almost impossible because all of these things are getting in the way, and it only takes I've genuinely gone for a whole day not eating. Like that's happened. Like where I've just not eaten, or and barely drunk, if anything. Like I'll like scurry to the bathroom, not while I'm here, to be clear, but I used to be. Or I'll scurry to the bathroom and drink some water from the tap and then come back. Like that's the levels we're talking about. So those moments and the fact that is a thing that I can document as happening very, very often over my life means that it's really not in my vested interest to want to keep anything really of YouTube around anymore. And I want to finish this by just saying, and by the way, all of this, sorry, I should be clear. None of this is a dunk. None of this is like a reply to be like, fuck you, Ryan. Like, no, not at all. I'm actually just wanting to explain stuff that I might not have explained in a way that might shed a little bit of light. It might not change your opinion at all. But it might give a good sense of where my mind is at when I'm saying what I'm saying. The last thing is to do with whether I sound like I feel weary about this, you know, like whether it's like grinding me down or whatever. The truth is that that's partly to do with the fact that yes, I did fail in some aspect, like recently with like going back to it and things like that. I'm now off it again, so looking forward. But there is this genuine feeling of like, okay, well, I think it's incredibly natural for me to experience genuine like about like having to experience this again, knowing that I've experienced this before, knowing that I'm going to continue to experience this kind of thing probably going forward, and that feeling of like, the infinite, the past that I can't see the beginning of feels like it's the future continuous, because I can't see a future that I can't see the end of, where it's the same both sides, because it's very hard to imagine a completely different world in front than you have behind. I think it's why we make such a big deal about it in media when we have like visionaries, for example. And the truth is that I've experienced this for so long that for me, it's not. It's when I am feeling in those moments, I know that that's just part of the process of me improving, and I know it's a part of the fact that I will eventually come back to this. And today, I feel much better. Today, I feel much. Not only do I feel much better, I feel more optimistic. Like there you will have these huge swings where suddenly, like, yes, I feel much better. I feel like I'm gaining. I'm doing better. I did do much better this time than I've ever done before. Ever. This was by far the best I've ever done. I definitely think I could do that again. I definitely think I could go beyond that. It's very possible. So there is very much this. So even though it might come across, I think it's partly maybe just a reality that, yes, obviously I'm fed up. I'm not going to lie. I am fed up, but it's not the same as it would have been when I was in my early 20s or when I was 18 and things like that. When I was really grappling with this in a way that was genuinely haunting me, because I couldn't see a way out, kind of thing. And I just eventually had to, out of spite, say to the universe, like, fuck you, trigger warning about suicide. Like, fuck you, I'm not going to kill myself because I can't fucking, it's just to spite the universe because I hate that you made my life this way. Like that kind of irrational thought. All of that all of that is a genuine thing that I've already had. Like what I'm experiencing now is so it's not. I'm not saying it's okay, and I'm not saying that there's and I want to be really appreciative of the genuine care and sincerity in you, even just registering that I am feeling that way. Like it genuinely makes me feel good to know that someone is reading me and that I don't feel unread. I don't feel unseen, basically. I feel seen. Very important, huge thing that you've done that. So thank you very much. That is to say that like I am a little bit veteraned in this now. I'm a little bit grizzled. And so I am looking at this further rather than I am genuinely in a better place and not a worse place. And I do want to continue along this path a little bit more because this is just kind of a bit of a cycle that I'm going to have to go through before I eventually reach a better place.
Wait, what's the end goal then?
The end goal is to reach so the thing is, the end goal could be multiple things. The end goal I have in my head is a situation in which I have no reliance upon it whatsoever. But that's kind of the sort of natural goal I would have, not because it's the right one or the ultimately best one for me, but just because it's the one which I feel I have the most control over understanding, like because I understand what that looks like. Does that make sense? If that makes sense, like I no longer need to do it. I have other things I'm doing. I'm starting to be way more productive. I'm starting to feel like I'm taking control over my life. All of these things starting to kind of tumble into place. Obviously, I'm not saying that I'm psychologically I'm done after that. Like, I've got, we're both fucked up in different ways. Like, it's not the only thing in my life that causes me suffering or whatever. I know that from watching something recently, from watching the D&D thing where like they said something and it struck a chord in me and I was like, oh, I still have that thing that I didn't think I had from many years ago. Like that, because that really hit me in a way that I didn't expect, to do with validation. And so that is I that is all well and good. the actual end result might be something which does have a bit more of that sustainability, but I want it to be as natural as possible, because like at the moment in my mind it has to be natural as opposed to like maintained by me. I think it's more work than I am willing to put in right now, and possibly in the future when I have more. Maybe in the future when when I'm doing more, I might actually be in such a better place I can do that and I can maintain like a more routine like way of engaging with YouTube in certain cases and not. But I honestly think if I've reached that point, I don't need it at that point, and it's not that I shouldn't, because at that point, because if I do, I'll slip immediately. Obviously, that's always a fear with these things, but that's not the reason I'm saying that. It's more a case of if I've reached the point where okay, I could start maintaining and having YouTube this like here and there. To be honest, I probably don't need to. Like I'll probably be like I'll probably be able to find other ways of experiencing the world which are better for me and stimulating myself, and a routine that actually is maybe starting to kind of cement itself. Like, you know, a virtuous cycle might, you know, snowball out of that.
Yeah. Like you mentioned that you're like a grizzled veteran at this point, right?
Yes, in a sense, yeah.
Like a grizzled veteran of what though?
A grizzled veteran of going through the frustration and like of trying to break out of the cycle, failing to break out of the cycle, the frustration, the despair, and then back to that cycle again.
So would you say
yeah.
So would you say you're a grizzled veteran of recovery?
That's interesting. I guess it's not one thing, right? It's not just recovery, it's also suffering. So it's hard to say like what exactly it is. Like it's the whole cycle in and of itself that I'm aware of and I'm used to. But again, to be clear, obviously there are ups and downs naturally. So it's not just a straight line going in one direction. But if I look at over the course of my life, it's on average been spinning up. It's better. Like that cycle tends to be less despairing or less frustrated or less or it takes longer for me to get back to my old state, or I'm off YouTube for longer, or whatever it might be. There are ultimately, it's not me repeating that over and over and again that's causing that. It's not like I'm practicing and getting better results because I'm just doing it over and over again. It's because my life is generally getting better in certain ways, and I'm learning and I'm growing as a human being, and I'm self-reflecting and all of this sort of stuff, which then means that cycle looks different over time. But the big deal is that I know it's a cycle, which means I know it comes back round to the opportunity for me to try again. So I will have like 5 days where I'm inconsolably upset, but the ultimate thing is, or frustrated or something like that. But truly, I know that after those 5 days, I might have learned something from that experience, and then look forward to the moment where I actually like shoot off again. It won't be literally immediately, but like it might be like a week later, I might have the opportunity. Like it's kind of what's happening now. And I'm trying new things. Like I'm thinking about what I'm doing. I've done some new stuff. I'm going to try to go to the library much more in order to kind of like fulfill this and find a space where it's easier for me to try and find work and charity work and all of this sort of stuff and you know, all of that stuff. So the point is that the cycle is what I'm used to having experienced so often in my life. The kind of let down and the potential, but also the hope. Both those things are very much a cycle I'm aware of. And I think a lot of people experience a cycle like that when they are genuinely in a position where they are trying to actively work against their better nature, let's call it. That's a cute name. When they're trying to work against what their brain is struggling to hold itself back from doing. So yeah, I've talked a lot. I've taken up a lot of time, so I'm quite happy with. But I'm happy with what.
Well, there's only 2 of us on the show, Joe, so we have to take up.
No, I know,
Yeah,
but but sometimes when I go into this, I feel like we don't talk back and forth, which is one of my biggest kind of gripes with me,
well,
like on the show, like because I
we
do
do it. This is
do
how our
that.
phone conversations go. Like, because a lot of it is, in a way, a lot of it is we don't see each other. Like, I'm trying to remember the last time I saw you actually, and it was like the few for like maybe a week before you went off to Worcester. And I was like, I don't know when I'm next going to actually see you properly. I was thinking, are you going to come down for Marxism? Which is a really out of pocket thing for me to say if you have no idea what Marxism is. It's a festival held by the Socialist Workers' Party, in which they get different speakers from different backgrounds to come in and um, different conversations, all surrounding left wing to far left wing politics, as well as some more centre left opinions as well. So, like Jeremy Corbyn's been the speaker there, and then you've had authors in different fields of left wing socialism and things like that. Are we socialists? I don't know about Joe anymore. I would just consider myself like I think Joe is at this point a far right white supremacist. But hey, that's what moving to the Midlands does to you.
No, I'm a black supremacist. We've talked about this.
Oh damn it! Great, yeah, yeah. Like it's me who is
You're the white supremacist.
No, I'm the Christian fundamentalist.
Oh, I see. Yeah, yeah.
You know, so yeah, like it's very is that take it as you will.
So
yeah, I was thinking, like
you were asking me about Marxism.
Yeah,
no. So I, to be honest, I made the decision in my head, but I hadn't actually said this to anyone. That I wasn't planning to come down because my work naturally like conflicts with it completely. And I'd already taken holiday and things like that off in order to for holidays later on and stuff like that. And it became it's not like a terrible thing. Like genuinely, if I'd thought about it more in advance and maybe if I'd like planned it more and maybe if I'd like talked to you about it, maybe I could have been like more motivated to do it. For this will probably be the 1 year I've gone to it for a few years in a row now, but this will be like a year that I think I'll skip it. But I'm going to try and watch it online where possible. So I'll buy an online ticket, I think, and then watch it online.
Because I was discussing it with. Oh, hello. I was discussing it with like someone. Because we've of course seen all the like posts for it around, and I was like, yeah, like my goal is. I was saying to them, like my goal is to speak at Marxism, and to host something. And the first thing she came up with was like, well, you're effectively an activist at this point. You always has been, even a lot less quieter than normal. But you also deal with something that no one ever deals with, like properly, and especially at these events, because there's a lot of pressure on people to be activists. Why don't you just have a live episode of Silly Whales where you talk about mental health and activism? And I just had the biggest smile on my face. And if you know me, you know that smiles don't come naturally like that, you know. But like it was a full on like full on emoji smile. Like it's the line is curved. I was like, that's a great idea. I'm gonna try and lobby and use nepotism to make that happen.
I mean, I don't know how you would do that, to be honest. I don't see that making the time slot. I'm going to be perfectly honest.
Super easy. Do you know why it's super easy? Because one of the biggest conversations that doesn't ever happen is mental health within. This is where I'm taking up all the space now. It's what we do, Joe. Is discussing mental illness in a mental health activism, in the concept of what's happening to our world. We don't discuss it. We just complain about it, but we don't actually discuss it. We don't discuss the effects of what happens when mental health funding is taken away. We just complain that it's been taken away. So then the first thing we do is we go, oh, look, this isn't happening, and we can't get our prescription for medication. We don't get our appointments. But we don't actually discuss that in the concept of also being socially aware of the issues in the world. For example, Palestine. Let's discuss that. I'm not going to discuss the views on Palestine. I'm just going to discuss that. When people are going out on marches and things like that, the first thing I've noticed is we look to criticize people who aren't, quote unquote, doing enough. So in BLM marches, the first thing we do is, oh, I didn't see you on a march. So then it becomes every middle-class white girl's identity when they go, oh, free Palestine, hashtag BLM. And like, because they don't want to seen as not supporting those things. And when in reality, you don't have to have it in your bio. We get it. You're not a racist.
Right.
That whole sphere has not been touched properly. And
Oh, no,
it's
that
not
has...
been...
Sorry,
it's
sorry.
not even... Yeah, sorry. I'm just going to finish this point. Like, it's not,
Yeah.
not only has it not been touched, we've not discussed it in the realm of left-wing ideology, because it's so important that we are inclusive in that. And there's a comment I made on a Reddit thread nearly 5 or 6 years ago, because the thread was surrounding people being lazy with activism. And the comment I made to summarize it was, we don't know everyone's circumstances. So shaming somebody into being an activist isn't making an activist. If anything, it's probably making more of an abolitionist, because they don't want to be left out, but they're being told that they're not doing enough. So they just don't want the show to continue at all. Like,
What do you mean by abolitionist? Sorry.
I might have used the wrong word completely. They don't want it, like, they want to get rid of it completely. Like, what I've noticed from people who are like ostracized for not being activists, they end up hating the cause and the idea of protesting. For example, we had a conversation about the Gaza, like they have like a little tent city in Hackney at the moment. And at the gym discussing it, and someone was saying how it's an eyesore and how they don't like it. And I was like, to be honest, I don't even notice it. And I cycle past it at least 3 times a week. And they were like, yeah, well, you know, I was walking by and one of the people in the tent city had a go at me because I think there was a back and forth, and they were saying, well, what are you doing for Palestine? And there was a back and forth between that. And he was saying he was really annoyed that he couldn't help more, and he felt bad that he couldn't help more, but also he has kids and he works a very stupidly, like, difficult job, like a lot of people do. Because he was called out for not doing enough, he eventually became anti the protest. So yeah, maybe abolitionist was the wrong word.
Apathetic, I think, is a more accurate word, right? Where it's you become disinterested with the topic, right?
Well, he didn't even become disinterested, he became anti it. To the point in which he didn't want them to exist because he felt like their attitude wasn't good enough. And also just because it was like, well, why are you saying fuck me for, you know? I'm not dropping bombs on them. Like, why are you having a go at me? Like, I already expressed how bad I feel about this thing. Why are you, like, trying to push me to do more than I actually can? And people's capacities to do things is so important. Like, the amount of times I've seen people, like, burn themselves, especially working in Cali, burn themselves out because they have to go to this visual. They have to go to this, like, center to help refugees access services on their days off. There's a reason why you're given at least 2 to 3 days off a week in Cali, because volunteering is the easiest thing to do for 1 week. It's the hardest thing to do for nearly a year and a half.
Yeah.
Because you see the same people suffering every single day. Even when you're being social, like going out to like the pub called Le Betterave, which means the beetroot. I believe. Yeah.
Yeah.
We would be there drinking, having a great time, but then we'll see guys who access services there, and we'll feel like shit. But then we realize, wait a second, context is really important here. If we are like drinking and enjoying ourselves, and this person's suffering, that's terrible. We feel bad. We should probably feel bad. But also, what work can be done at 1 a.m. in the morning? Nothing. There's literally nothing we can do. Like, giving money doesn't solve the problem. Providing a short-term shelter doesn't solve the problem. It creates more problems. Doing anything in that situation is probably more disrespectful than if we like started just enjoying ourselves and continue to enjoy ourselves. We can't really do as much more as we're doing now. We worked in a kitchen for ages. Like, there's only so much we can do. Like, we're not superheroes, despite there being volunteers that thought of themselves as such. We're not like these like super like crazy like freaks of nature, despite volunteers thinking of themselves as such. We're literally people who went, hey, we like this for more than a week, and we feel like we can make a difference for a sustained period of time. So we're going to be here long term, and we're going to do what we can do. But the mental health side of the activism that comes with it is so ridiculous. So even if you're in Hackney and you're like protesting the fact that Diane Abbott's being mistreated at the moment, there needs to be the conversation of this. What happens when the columns collapse? Because eventually they will. Because I see so many people and the same faces, and they're looking tired and they're looking like despondent because the work that they're putting in kind of doesn't always bear fruits. And they're like a boxer with only one arm. You're throwing the punch, but you have nothing to protect your face.
Well, it
So you get
regularly
hit.
doesn't in certain cases, right? That's
Well, in most of it never does.
yeah, that's what I'm
Like,
saying. Like it's
you know,
fundamentally, the effort isn't. It doesn't. The effort for it is far greater than the reward in many cases.
which is why I look at like the family you come from, right? They have expectations.
I will push back on you on a few things in a moment, but yeah, I
they
do
have
want to.
expectations. They understand how this works. I don't think, but so by proxy, you understand how it works, and by proxy, I understand how it works. However, I don't think people who are a little bit younger than us or people the same age as us who haven't had that insight understands the fact that what we're protesting for, we probably wouldn't win the battle on this time round. And the ideas of the expectations of what we're supposed to be doing is crazy. Like, we get it. Things are bad everywhere. But right now it's 1:00 in the morning and you're messaging in the group chat because you want to continue to fight for whatever cause it is. The message now that you're sending isn't going to change anything. So you might as well send it at 9:30 in the morning instead. Heck, we probably wouldn't be able to get the placards you want printed anyway until Monday. So here we are on Friday. Maybe, just maybe, you can leave it until Monday because we can get it all done on Monday. Like, those conversations are important. So, like, the point I'm making is it's not a matter of like, oh, don't protest if you can't protest. No, we should definitely encourage people to protest. But the conversation of how do we encourage positive actions and our own mental well-being alongside that to create a better environment that isn't include like, oh, the amount of times I've heard someone like break down, like I've seen someone break down crying because the question was asked of, well, what are you doing for this cause here? Like, and the person then has to respond with like, I have severe social anxiety and I don't like being in crowds. That's not inclusive behavior. Things like that. Is why I'm saying like that's a good conversation to be had, because I see the young people at Marxism, and by young people I mean like our age, because we're considered babies there. And it is like I've seen those faces in Calais because some of them I know from Calais. I'm like, yeah, maybe we should probably have that conversation that the middle-aged people in Calais didn't have with you, and the middle-aged people who you activist and do work with now won't have with you. But yeah.
So are you okay for me to push back slightly?
Oh yeah. I'm not going to fight you.
No, I'm thinking more like time and things like that.
Oh no. Push everywhere.
Okay, cool. I will push back on a couple things. So there has actually been not just general discussions about like accessibility to engage with it and the difficulties of that. I mean, again, I am surrounded by, I would argue, a rather above average group of people in relation to this. So, and who are very nuanced and understood and good understandings of, and have these discussions amongst themselves, like, you know, my family and extended family. So that does happen. I've seen those conversations happening all the time. I'm not saying that happens all the time elsewhere. But but more importantly, there have been meetings very much about this whole thing, and there have been meetings in particular specifically about, I mean, the big thing with after COVID was that they kept a lot of the stuff that they hadn't initially had with COVID because they just realized it was so much better for many people who otherwise couldn't make it. So it was a huge thing to allow people who, were in a position where, they were probably not going to go and they could just like watch the Zoom meeting or whatever it fucking is on. I can't remember right now. I think, yeah, it is Zoom. And so on. Like, that's a important step that probably should have happened before, but these things take time. Sometimes it depends on
Zoom was like
just depends
barely
on
a
who.
thing, like widely used by people until the pandemic really kind of
I mean
made
more
it a
that
thing.
accessibility with the meetings. I mean,
Yeah.
but I mean, even like the YouTube channel and stuff is within the sort of within the lifespan isn't that old as I understand it, and the content that goes up on that. But importantly, something you said about I definitely agree that there is a type of firstly, a lot of what you're describing is specifically, and I'm trying to get the right word here, is about communication in and of itself, right? Like how do you talk to someone about this thing? How do you engage someone in a way and get them to be able to find ways to engage and help, like without putting too much strain on people? Because there is this thing, which I don't think that like a lot of my family does not do this like at
Oh no,
all
of
with
course not.
me or anyone that I know of. They do not put that kind of pressure on. They are ready to support me if I ask, but they are not the kind of people who are like going to make me do these sorts of things. They might like want me to try and go to something or whatever, and I'll probably be like, yeah, no, that sounds really important, but that's on very important cases, right? And sometimes it's like, yeah, I can't make that, and they're like, yeah, no, it's all right. But there is, I think, this, and this actually is something that comes up. Both the performative thing that you were talking about, I've seen a meeting about sort of the performative activism, like the the one that's really not doing anything, but it's just purely for the to represent a wave or a trend rather than actually like being a part of a movement. There's that is a very much understood topic, and I've seen meetings at Marxism in particular on that. That might have actually been one of the ones that happened during COVID, if I remember correctly.
Well, like the whole white savior complex.
I mean, yeah, to an extent, yeah. But I was going to say specifically, there is also a different thing, which is the individual. Is the crux of is what am I trying to say? Is this sort of like individualistic hero worship / like put the emphasis on the individual notion that people have sometimes when they get into these things. Not many people that I have met actually do this, but I absolutely will presume that the person you spoke to is speaking truthfully, and they did not deserve like the amount of berating they got and everything like that. I'm just going to presume off the top. And from the sounds of that, in that case, that person, obviously, this could all just be largely miscommunication and emotions getting high and things like that. But there's also do exist people who have a very like who sort of fundamentally misunderstand what both movements and kind of praxis and activism really is, which is that there is this, is that the numbers matter far more than like the individual doing a great thing, right? If you were donating something, that's doing something. If you go to a if you go to a picket line somewhere, that's doing something. If you are if you're giving leaflets around to your friends or to or around like your workplace or something, that's doing something. If you're having a conversation with people who are learning in this, who understand more in this subject, and you listen to them, you are doing something. You're able to make better decisions perhaps in the future or whatever. And it's very clear that so much of this is that if you start like taking the individual and arming down on them as opposed to arming down on the actual issue, like the system that they're trying to kind of completely and utterly like renovate, then it's not, then it's very similar to how you would do, it's very similar to all of the kind of sort of class wars and class division and race division that has created issues that means that these things can continue to perpetuate. The infighting essentially of people who are really connected and united and not actually at war with one another. I should be clear, not so much class war, but like, the sexes, the genders, the sexual orientation, race, religion, blah, 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 where so much of this is, where so much of the, so much is fetishized of one another. And I'm using that word in a non-sexual way, but fetishized in order to create these like really specific ideas of one another in order to create division, right? In order to create situations in which they can't see eye to eye and they stop trying to reach across one another, and one can shout at the other and the other one can possibly still emotionally, but quite naturally say back to them like, fuck you, fuck what you're saying, even if it's completely reasonable, right? And that's and so I'm 100% agreeing with you on the statements you're making as far as like what the problems can be. I definitely have seen lots of these be talked about, and specifically like mental health as well. There have been loads of Marxism meetings about mental health in relation to lots of, in relation to the entire thing, like whether you're talking about socialism specifically or like a dialectical analysis of mental health or mental health
like,
in the modern era or whatever.
We've been to them. Like we've been to them.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm gonna let you finish.
No, I was getting to the end anyway. So I just want to push back on those points just because I didn't want to. I didn't want to because I don't quite agree with you of the enthusiasm that you have when you say it. When I just mean enthusiasm, like the emphasis I guess you have on saying it, where I'm like, I don't quite feel that in certain places. But again, it's one of those things where across everyone, it's like I can't account for every fucking person. The truth is, if we might be in agreement here, most people aren't very good at doing a lot of things and are not very good at engaging with one another. Most people are fucked up in some way, like psychologically in their head, where they have certain issues that they have to deal with, and it all just comes out in day-to-day life. Yeah, and like, as a result, we are very different. We struggle to cooperate when we get down to that individual basis rather than seeing the larger picture. Anyway, yeah,
it's like for me, like I'll say you're very lucky, and I'm very lucky by proxy, because like you wouldn't experience the turmoil of that struggle with like activism because you have a veteran like mother and father who do it, effectively have done it as a major part of their lives, as both as jobs, as passion projects, and as just a fundamental way of living as well. So it's very much like ingrained. And then the people around you outside of that have also been around and have understood like different times and different ways. So for me, it's not about getting people, because you mentioned that like being able to positively engage. It's about getting people to positively disengage. Like effectively, to put it bluntly, are you able to tell yourself to fuck off and to not like be a part of something for the betterment of your own like well-being, even as hard as it may be. And that's like what I was saying, that the enthusiasm I have for it is not because there's not a conversation of it. It's because it's not explored, in my opinion, in a way that is palatable for newcomers into different spaces like this. Like it's a fairly, like the meetings might happen. Yes, sure. But in general, to reach an audience that isn't just in the ecosystem of like Marxism, for example, like, because there'll be people who dip in and dip out. That's the reality of it. Like I'm in the Hackney Silent Racism WhatsApp group. There's loads of members of Silent Racism, but they're not in the WhatsApp group. So for the people who dip in and dip out, those conversations are more important for them than it is for, say, myself and you. We don't need those conversations. Like when it came to BLM and all that stuff, I did the Hackney Town Hall stuff. I never ever went to Whitehall and did the bigger march and demos. Why? I have like a really mild claustrophobia. I'm not going to trigger that. Also, police. Also, like literal Nazis. Like, and I remember getting like shit for that as well. Like someone tagging me, be like, "Oh, why aren't you here?" Like with the Whitehall like stuff. I'm like, I don't want to be there. Like, congratulations, you went and you stood somewhere, and you yelled. You know, you're one of many hundreds of thousands of voices that day. Congratulations. I'm not going to give you a cookie because the cookie's now moldy because you ruined it by bragging that you were somewhere. You're there. You're there to do your thing. Do your thing. Like, the whole point, as you said, Joe, is being there and as blunt as your number. The numbers matter. So be the number. You know? Be proud that you're the number, but don't use it as a way to shit on other people. And it's that positive activism. And being able to go, hey, do you know what? I'm fucked. You know, I'm getting cooked. I'm gonna take a step away. And because right now, what we see a lot of is we see a lot of purposefully misconstruing statements, especially in relation to current events being Palestine, being LGBTQ stuff, where somebody will make a very logical statement and it will be, well, case in point, the issues right now that trans people are facing. Somebody made a really open and honest statement of saying, we don't understand these issues because we're not living through these issues. So we really shouldn't be platforming people who have time and time again showed that they don't understand these issues rather than speaking on these issues. In a matter of seconds, it's misconstrued as we're trying to silence voices of logical people. How could we do that? We're trying to silence the voices of scientists who have cherry-picked certain studies. No, it's very simple. You're coming in and you're phoning in on whatever show you're doing or you're tweeting whatever about an issue that you don't understand, but you're talking as if you do. That's the problem. The problem isn't who you are, it's that you're saying things as if you really know, but you don't. You don't know. And it's that ability to tell yourself to shut the fuck up, and maybe your voice doesn't need to be heard that day. You know? It's things like that.
Yeah, sorry. I thought you finished.
No, I was only going to say, it's like, you mentioned it, like, said it perfectly as well, about communication being key. I think sometimes people have this idea that they have to say things in a certain way to get their voices across. Like, the point of, like, having, I say, like, a talk or whatever, at Marxism, and the reason why I like the idea so much is mainly because it's not as serious as other people might do the talk. Because it's me and you. Which immediately makes it easier to listen to and more accessible to listen to. I'm going to sound really bad. People might come back at me in a few years for this. Some people are really good at writing things down, but they're not good at saying things out loud.
I mean, that's true. Yeah.
But the reason why I say it's going to come back because people are going to automatically go, he's talking about me, and these people who can't, I'm going to just smack the shit out of people right here. I'm going to do it. And the people who think that I'm talking about them in the future, because they can't diss me, they're going to diss me. And guess what? I'm probably better writer than them too. Like, you write about one subject, I write about 50,000. So you can come at me, okay? Like, the reason why this whole show isn't ridiculously serious is because we're not serious people, but also we're not ever talking as if we know in depth 100% what the right answer is.
We're sincere.
We're honest to a degree, you know? Like, and I say to a degree because I don't believe anyone's ever 100% honest. So when it comes to like meetings, and some of the meetings I've gone to, not just with Marxism, but in Calais, for example, or with like different activist groups in and around London, the idea has always been, when it comes to mental health, we have to be really serious. No, this show was called Silly Whales, literally because we couldn't think of a name, and I went, Silly Whales, I like the name of it, and you were like, yeah, that's cool. Like, sometimes we have to have jovial conversations about serious topics because it breaks down a multitude of different walls. And at the events I've been to, when we discuss mental health, we tend to pick a target and we discuss it in depth and we use lots of words and we just go at it, and we just say really serious things, and we say things for an applause, and that's it. Good meeting, guys. What I want, and what my friend was saying, as she put it, is being able to have a discussion about what it is to be an activist, but also understanding that you're not supposed to try and save the world, but also understanding just your mental health in this ecosystem that we're in, and like the world that we're in, but have it done in a way in which is presentable and nice and easy to digest, so you're not just being yelled at. Is that format? So it doesn't have to be like an esteemed author doing the topic. It can be two fucking bozos. You know?
Can be, yeah.
So, well, it should be. That's like, I'm gonna double down. I feel like when we discuss mental health, we discuss it really seriously, and it's so boring. Like, I'm gonna show. No, like, come on, man. Like, talk about depression. Why are you giving me a study? Come on. Like, I get it. If I want to see a scientific research into it, guess what? I'll just look for scientific research. But you're talking about mental health here in a political sense and about people's lives here. Make it easy to digest. And also have people who you can sort of relate to, you know? To bounce off, at least. That's the main point I was making. Not really it wasn't really an attack on on people's way of handling mental health meetings in different events or whatever. It was more of this is a fun idea, and also we can make it really good.
I mean, to be honest, I was thinking about it. I don't tend to go to those meetings anyway, so I don't have a lot of sense of some of those, right? Like, it's, it just depends. There is I mean, I think you could go to Marxism and not everyone, for example, who speaks. And I mean, this is, to be fair, it's one of the good things about Marxism to a certain extent, but it also means that, it does lessen in certain areas. Some meetings aren't as good as others, and that just is how it is. So that's sort of a thing. I can say that. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that statement. Some are not that great, and some are significantly better. It's just how it is.
That's the thing. I think because certain topics are discussed by people who probably shouldn't be speaking, and that's because like I've been to one mental health Marxism thing with you, and like that was sort of the issue where it was a bit of this is a bit serious. And then I've been to loads of different like little mental health things. One was in Cali, which I've organized, and I really want it to be more like less formal, but everyone wants things to be really done properly so they can appear to be doing things. Like, well, come on, guys. Like, let's be real here. We're all trying not to be suicidal. We're all trying not to be really anxious and upset and angry. Let's use these meetings as an opportunity to have those feelings exposed in a way in which we can understand them, but also so that we can actually play with them rather than having to be guarded and having to just like, but damn it, I have my screen off for ages. We've been going for 2 hours. Jesus Christ. But
wow. Okay.
that's a long one.
Yeah, I didn't quite realize it was that long. I thought it was. Oh no, we haven't actually got 2 hours. It's an hour and a half, mate. It's an hour and a half. It says 2 hours. It's rounding up. It's an hour and a half.
Okay,
don't worry.
Good. Okay, good.
I knew it was long. Well, I was like 2 hours. That's fucking crazy.
But we go for half an hour more. No, I'm joking.
No. Yeah, this is a long one. But to be fair, I think this is good anyway. I do want to just say, I do want to say to your point though, like I do agree with you that about the way mental health is spoken about, and I do actually think that that's also just a kind of thing that's true of most mainstream media on average at the moment. Still, we're kind of getting we're getting better at it, I think. But I think mainstream media is still roughly in that space. But there's definitely media beyond this, there's definitely, we know of podcasts that you particularly know a podcast that exists where that's broken much more because of the format, because of the nature of a podcast. It's easier to do that. It's easier to have someone and then someone else they know talking about these subjects in a much more casual way.
What podcast are you referencing?
There was the one by the guy in the Irish band.
Blind Boy podcast, yeah.
Yeah. I remember. See, I remember. I remember these things sometimes. Yeah, I've never seen it, but I remember you talking about it very, very particularly. And so yeah, like that's that's great. I think even RSVJP, whatever the fuck it's called, that
What?
one, the one where you whisper like RVSP or whatever.
The Justin Nick and Roosevelt Vanity Project.
That's the one. Yeah, they talk about mental health stuff on that as well, right?
Not really.
Not all the time, but on occasion. I thought they did anyway. Doesn't matter. The point is,
it's very superficial.
Okay, cool. Thanks for clarifying, because I thought it was a little bit so. But the point is I definitely see that I think it's becoming there in more niche spaces. It is becoming more of a thing to have more. To have discussions with different tones and playing around with that. So I definitely think that's a real. I genuinely think that's a good idea that we should be kind of doing that more. And I think, to be fair though, this is consistent with with a lot of things where initially subjects, it's hard to be not serious during a time when that thing is still a sore point. Like it's very difficult to have a very blasé conversation about about what it is to be gay during like some of the travesties in the 1960s and things like that, and so on. Like it's a very different time. It's a very different time to. It's not tonally with what needs to happen, because there needs to be more of an actual like stand up voice about it, and it so it can't. You can't quite talk about the nuances and so on. But I think we have absolutely reached the point where honestly, I think we're overdone for that shift to have changed around mental health. And I do think that there is a change around mental health that has happened. So we should be seeing that more. And I hope that becomes more mainstream, and I hope that becomes more normalized, that people feel more comfortable speaking about these subjects that way. So I agree with you on that for sure.
Yeah, like again, like it's very much like I'll push for it next year for Tilly Wells Live to be at Marxism.
I mean, you know what? Fuck it. I'll do it.
Do you know what? Like, at the worst, it will be a really fun live episode of a show with people there, and it will probably be nice to have people like live being like, "But what about this?" And then cut to us looking like you have no idea what's going on. We just flip the table over and run away. Like.
Yeah, they could stick us in a corner of the. I know where they could stick us in a corner, like
Yeah, like
we don't have to take up much space.
True, we physically I might, but I think aside from that, I think we can just be underneath the stairs.
Yeah, but the amount you have extra on a person, I have less than on a person. So really, we're just two people. Yeah. I was actually thinking about this the other day, talking about like kind of like funny mental health stuff. Like with you, like having your sad in the summer, me having my sad in the winter, and just the ways in which we are like the way in which like you kind of excel and I don't excel, and the other, and vice versa. I feel like we really are two people that if we did like Dragon Ball fusion, we would just make the perfect being.
Well, no, we'll make the perfect human being until spring comes around and we just die. like, Autumn's
not great for me. I don't know how autumn is for you. I think autumn's good for you, isn't it?
Yeah, autumn's good because it gets colder.
No, spring's good for me. I like spring.
Okay, I was good because
it's just that it has to come after winter. That's the shit one for me.
Yeah, we're both on we both have a downward spiral moment, but we're just two kids in trench coats. Really, this whole show doesn't exist.
Yeah.
No. Nepotism baby, let's do it.
Nepo baby.
On that note, we're gonna take 2 steps to the rear and get out of here. We're in the wind. See ya.
Sorry for keeping you. Bye.
Nah, I apologize for nothing at all.
I know you didn't.
Another half an hour.